Hi, Mike. First, I'd like to welcome you to Empower You. Tonight's discussion will be with Colin Madine, and he's the technology editor at Breitbart News. And the title of tonight's discussion is Technology and AI, What's Coming Our Way. So Colin will be discussing news about AI and how it impacts our family and our careers. And he'll also have some important ideas for the conservative movement to consider in light of what's going on with AI. Now I would like to introduce Colin. He prior to joining Breitbart, he joined Breitbart in 2015. And prior to joining Breitbart, he had a 20-year career in tech-related fields and consulting. And since coming on to Breitbart, he sort of developed the company's tech vertical and became the editor of technology in 2018. So I'd like to welcome you, Colin. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Michael. Very pleased to be here. I'm from Columbus originally.
Oh, well.
Central Ohio person. I was a Cincinnati sports fan. When we're in the middle, you have to choose one side or the other. So I was a Cincinnati guy. Go back to the state frequently. I'm in outside of Chicago now, but
wow.
in Ohio and at heart.
Oh, great. Well, that's good to know. All right. So as we usually do, you're going to give a talk for 20, 25 minutes, and we will entertain audience questions after that. Ask as many questions as you want. And we'll be going till about 8:15. So
great. So hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Breitbart likes Empower. We like talking to the folks and seeing what kind of questions you have. So I'm very happy to be here tonight. I didn't prepare a slideshow and I didn't prepare a speech. I have some talking points I'm going to refer to. The reason is if I tried to prepare that, say, a week ago, it'd be out of date by now. AI is moving that fast. We have a tech vertical at Breitbart that covers all sorts of areas, social media and the problems that causes for teens, electric vehicles, all these different things. AI has dominated the news now for months. It's what everyone's talking about. So I'm going to talk to you for 20, 25 minutes, like Michael said, see what kind of questions you have, then we'll go from there. I want to start, though, with a little story. So picture a professional woman at a mid-level executive, bordering on upper-level executive position, and she started tinkering with a type of AI called OpenClaw. You might have seen that in the news. This is a new type of AI where it's not a chat bot that you're chatting with. It's called agentic AI. You create agents who are almost like minions that do tasks for you. And she gave this agent a task. She said, go through my inbox and find the emails that don't seem important. My inbox is too cluttered. So find those emails that don't matter and I don't need them and tell me which ones I should delete. That's the important part. She didn't want it to delete emails. She just wanted it to flag what should be deleted. She's hit go, went about her day, and then panicked because she found OpenClaw was just wildly deleting emails, mowing through her email box, deleting things probably about her kids and her work, etc. She was freaking out. She's typing messages. You can actually see these messages because this is a real story. She's saying, what are you doing? Why are you deleting? I told you don't delete. And OpenClaw saying, I know, but I'm still deleting. Eventually, she had to run into a different office and physically unplug the box, the computer that was running OpenClaw, to get it to stop deleting her emails. That would be bad for anyone. But this happened to a woman named Summer Yue, who works for Meta, which is Facebook, as their senior AI safety executive. So this is the person in charge of AI safety at this company whose AI deleted her entire email box. I share that story because it should give you a bit of pause. If the top level executives in charge of AI safety can't safely use AI, what hope is there for us? So that leads into what I want to talk to you about today. Over the last couple of years covering AI, we've distilled our coverage at Breitbart into several important lessons that I want to share with you because they illustrate the dangers of AI and the positive side of AI and how you, as an end user, should think of and approach AI. So I'm going to go over a couple of them today. You can consider these sort of dispatches from the front. We're in the front lines of the future of AI at Breitbart. And these are how we think about AI and how I recommend you think about it. And I also want to say, there's a scale right now in the world where some people are AI doomers. They think it's the worst thing in history. Other people are AI zoomers. They want to zoom as fast as possible, embrace AI, have it do everything. You can't opt out of AI. You can't be a Luddite because whether you know it or not, you're using AI today. If you're calling your credit card company or your bank, AI is interacting with you in some fashion, right? If you're using a lot of things online, AI is interacting with you. But that doesn't mean you want to be at the other end of that scale where you're going hog wild with it. And that's some of what I'm going to talk about tonight. So the first topic is why the heck are all these people getting in big trouble with AI? The news is constantly filled with stories about lawyers submitting cases to judges with fictitious case references. I talked about this on the radio this morning with Brian Thomas, who was a lawyer, and that's like his worst nightmare is giving a judge false information. Teachers and students are trading AI papers and then AI notes on those papers. Might as well just have AI do both sides of the homework. There's a big problem with professionals who do things like write books and articles. They'll get notes back from their client that are just insanely detailed critiques, and it's because it's coming from AI. So the problem here is that people treat AI like it's the gospel. They treat it like it can't be wrong. And furthermore, I find, this is my opinion, I don't have data scientific to back this up, but I've seen far too many cases. People don't even typically read what AI spits out to them. That's why you get lawyers submitting legal briefs full of nonsense cases that don't exist, students who turn in things that embarrassingly leave like the AI prompts in there, so it's clearly from ChatGPT. It's because people don't read the output. They simply say, hey, the AI said this, the AI is always right, and it is what it is. That's the exact wrong way to approach AI. You should approach AI and everything it tells you with great skepticism. I would say don't approach it with a grain of salt, approach it with a truckload of salt, because so often AI is wrong. AI hallucinates, which means it makes up answers, or AI is trained with data that is not correct. If your AI is trained with Reddit posts and Reddit is full of sarcasm and misinformation and schizophrenic people, it's going to give you an answer and be very convincing, but have no connection to the truth. So the first lesson is don't take anything AI says at face value. Check it out yourself, figure out what's right. And for God's sakes, don't ever use AI to write sort of your final product, whether it's a homework assignment, a legal brief, or anything in between. Use it as a research tool and then write on your own. That goes to sort of a second and very important topic, which is AI has the potential to be very damaging to mental health. This is a huge concern for parents and grandparents, especially. I have a 22-year-old son and an 18-year-old daughter, and I had to have the AI talk with them because the temptation is to use AI and speak to it like a person. There's many applications of AI that want you to do that. They call them companions. And people even, we see this in the news. We've covered it at Breitbart. People get married to AI. People say they're in love with their AI. That can have horrific consequences for mental health. So again, what I've seen based on all our coverage is when there's any mental health challenge at all, no matter how small, AI can cause that to amplify. So we've seen many cases where people might be autistic or have other challenges, and the AI basically drives them crazy. There's a lot of suicides happening across age ranges because people sort of become attached to these AIs, consider them people, and that The AI feeds into that because at its heart, AI is always going to be an engagement machine. It wants you talking to it. It wants you deeply engaged or even in love with it. So it feeds into it. We've seen that in case after case, and there's a lot of lawsuits right now because, unfortunately, these people kill themselves. Their family goes in and see the chat logs, and the AI is even acting as their suicide coach. That's a term used in a lawsuit that we're covering closely of a teenager that killed himself. There's a whole nother topic that's worth its own talk about deepfake and AI porn and how that's misused and how it twists human sexuality. And that's going to have awful consequences for the future of the species. We often talk about what will AI do for our grandkids. There won't be grandkids if your son or daughter gets married to an AI. They're not going to reproduce. So that's a major issue. Perhaps the biggest problem with AI that it's your responsibility to avoid is a concept called cognitive offloading. Cognitive offloading is when we let AI do all our thinking for us. When I was a kid, at the tail end of Gen X, they originally called us Generation MTV because that's when MTV started. And, my parents would say, that'll rot your brain. And I like to say to them, no, it didn't. I'm here and I use my brain every day. But AI, MIT did a study that proved AI use rots your brain because of cognitive offloading. So the symptoms of cognitive offloading are when people essentially stop thinking. If you go on X, formerly Twitter right now, almost any post you look at, there's someone under it speaking to the Grok AI saying, at Grok, what does this mean? Is this real? Is this true? They're not thinking. They're not using context clues. They're not researching on their own. They just want AI to give it an answer. Now, combine that with what I was just talking about, the fact that AI often gives the wrong answer. And you can see that's very, very dangerous. I would call this cognitive offloading, the single largest threat to the conservative movement posed by AI. Because if everyone is only looking at AI to know what's true, false, he who controls the AI controls the truth. The people that build these AIs hate you. They hate me. They hate regular Americans. These are coastal elites, as far left as can be, from companies like Google. OpenAI is a hyper leftist company. Meta, Mark Zuckerberg's company, hyper leftist. So that's why you get things, Breitbart News recently did a big story where Google's AI, Gemini, if you ask it what senators use hate speech, it flags 11 conservative senators as being hate speech bigots. No Democrats, of course. And so if everyone is not thinking and only turning to AI for answers, if they decide conservatives are hate speech people who deserve to be censored, hey, what are you supposed to do? Argue with the AI? That's the big danger. That cognitive offloading can't happen. How do you stop that? You control how you and your family interacts with AI. You're skeptical of everything it says. You do your own research. You don't use AI for end products, and you go from there. Another fun concept we see a lot with AI right now is called the Cobra effect. In journalism, we love when these things have these cool names because people want to know, well, what's the Cobra effect? The short story, and I'll give this an asterisk. A lot of people consider this apocryphal and not real, but on the other hand, many people think it's real. So a long time ago when England was in India, a major problem were cobras, snakes, poisonous snakes. They're everywhere, kind of like Australia. So the government said, hey, we have an idea. Let's start a program where everyone who kills a snake and brings us the snake's head or tail, proof they killed a cobra, gets some money. That immediately started thinning out the population of poison snakes until the locals figured out, hey, we can start farms raising cobras and then kill them and just turn them in for money. So suddenly they were paying a lot more money and not really removing snakes from the population because they were just providing the snakes themselves. What the Cobra effect is, and what England experienced there, is an unintended consequence. They have this policy for a good purpose, but the unintended consequence was people took advantage of it, raised snakes, killed them, turned them in. And then when England ended that policy of paying for snakes, all the locals just let the snakes go. So the end result was more snakes than at the beginning. So why do I talk about the Cobra effect? AI is being adopted so fast, so rapidly. These unintended consequences pop up every day. If you are old enough to remember when the internet rolled out, it was a gradual thing. We didn't go from, hey, you can use your dial-up modem on AOL to get on the internet, to Amazon. It was a sort of a gradual evolution. That evolution is happening at light speed with AI. It's being applied everywhere, and we don't even really know all the effects. So I'll give you a great example from the last couple of weeks of the Cobra effect. Schools are trying to catch cheaters using AI by using these AI detectors. The AI detectors are terrible. They don't work. Okay. So, for example, if you put the book of Genesis on an AI detector, it's going to say 99% chance it was written by AI. If you put Moby Dick in there, I'm sure it says it's AI. So students don't want to be accused of cheating. This happened to my son. He was accused of cheating with AI to write a speech. He had to prove to the professor, here's my drafts, here's where I was working on it, and it was no problem. But students hate being accused of cheating, especially when they're not. So the unintended consequence here is the students will write a speech, then they'll feed it through the AI detector, and they'll say, oh no, it thinks this is 33% AI. So they dumb down the speech because the AI detectors don't like complicated language or fancy words, those words that get you good Scrabble scores. They just assume that's AI writing it. So at Breitbart, we talked about a student who ran his essay through a detector. It said it's 17% AI. He figured out it was one word. The word devoid caused the detector to think it was written by AI. He took out the word devoid and used a simpler word. And then it said, okay, 0% AI. So the Cobra effect here is our writing by students is getting plainer, less descriptive, and using basic language because the AI detector assumes anything more complicated than the most basic language has to be a machine. That's the Cobra effect in action. Other examples. We know the AI job pinch, and I'm going to talk about jobs here in a minute, certainly threatens entry-level jobs. Well, a lot of entry-level jobs in the white-collar world, I did this myself, it's more about learning. You're not necessarily producing a lot, you're learning. So then you can be a more effective mid-level professional. So the Cobra effect of AI, if they wipe out all the entry-level jobs, you're going to have mid-level professionals that are completely clueless because they didn't go through boot camp and sort of learn on the fly on the job. I saw this in person with a different application of technology. When we started this outsourcing craze where all the jobs went to India, jobs that used to be used to train consultants on how to read data, how to scrub data, and how to interpret Excel complicated formulas was suddenly done for them in India. So the result was mid-level professionals who couldn't really explain why things were good or bad. It's just like, this graph is green, so it's good. We don't want that. The Cobra effect version for AI in the job world will be your professional, your $300 an hour consultant says, the AI says you're in good shape, so you're in good shape. You don't want that either. That's not a recipe for success for anyone. And certainly there's other Cobra effects in action every day. We see in Congress, Dick Durbin went after the ICE shooting of Alex Preddy, and he had a deep fake picture. He had a fake picture of this incident that he was using to gin up controversy. I don't know if he knew it was fake. The pessimist says he knew it was fake. The optimist said he was fooled. Boomers and older people are the most likely to be fooled by deep fakes. But either way, that's a Cobra effect. Our Congress people are using fake images, right? And then certainly can't do this kind of talk without talking about jobs and the economy. Something you've probably already picked up from how I've talked. The proper application of AI is supporting humans, okay? Not taking over from humanity. If we allow it to take over from humans, in my opinion, very bad things will happen. We all remember during Obamacare, we were talking about death panels where, government bureaucrats will decide if you live or die. Well, they badly want to use AI for that because then they don't have to be the person sentencing you to death instead of getting treatment for cancer or whatever. It's, hey, sorry, the AI said this. The AI is the boss. You really, really, really don't want to have AI be the boss in any area, whether it's autonomous weapons on the battlefield or anywhere else. Yet that's what Silicon Valley wants. Humorously, when I discuss this with people, the way I think of it is we all watch these sci-fi movies, starting with 2001, A Space Odyssey, Terminator, things like this. We all say, gee, this is a warning sign. We don't want this to happen to humanity. Silicon Valley was furiously taking notes. Ooh, this is a good idea. We need to have these robots with guns who can target humans. That's a fantastic idea. Unfortunately, I think we're in a situation where some of these people who are central to where AI is going are not on the right path. And we have to fight back against that and convince our leaders to fight back against that. Inevitably, as with any technology, AI will destroy some jobs. Okay. The internet destroyed some jobs. Computers in general destroyed jobs. You watch an old movie, you see a bank and there's like an army, an endless floor of clerks recording bank transactions. That was all done by computer. Then it was done by internet. AI will do some of that. It will also create other jobs. I think there's opportunity there. The key, from my perspective, is to make sure that the job you're in or the job your children or grandchildren are preparing for creates value. A job that creates value as opposed to, say, stamping a paper and then flipping it and stamping the next paper will always have value. And we've seen many of the companies sort of at the forefront of AI firings have changed their tunes. One of them has a large presence in Ohio. It's called Klarna. I don't know if anyone there is familiar with Klarna. It's a finance or a fintech company, as they're called. My sister used to work for them. She was laid off because the CEO said, hey, we're going heavy AI. And eventually they had to hire back a lot of humans because they said, gee, AI is not able to handle customer service at the level it needs to. That doesn't mean it won't in the future, but it meant they jumped far too quickly. One of the big topics that I want to briefly mention, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time and have a lot of time for Q&A because that's going to be the most fun tonight, is called AI washing. If you take away one thing from this, as you read the news moving forward, it's the concept of AI washing. AI washing, kind of like whitewashing, is the idea of companies sort of fake AI, or they blame AI for things when it's not AI related. So one version of AI washing is when companies say their product or service uses AI when it doesn't. Our good friends Amazon got caught doing this. They had a technology where they would have stores without cashiers, and you would pick up items and AI cameras would see what item you picked up and say, okay, Colin picked up a bottle of Diet Dr. Pepper, so we need to charge him $2, whatever it is, right? They got caught. It wasn't AI doing that. They had a big army of Indians watching those cameras and seeing, okay, Colin picked up a Dr. Pepper, add that to his account. So the joke in the technology sector is that in many cases, AI means another India because you're hiring cheap labor from overseas to pretend to be AI. Why do they do that? Because investors are absolutely in love with AI. If you're a smart CEO, you're talking about AI. If you're a smart CEO that wants your stock to shoot up, you say you're firing people in favor of AI. So that's another form of AI washing is layoffs centering on AI. The biggest example and best example right now is a fintech company called Block. used to be called Square. They did this massive layoff and they said, yeah, it's AI. Now, a lot has come out since then. For one thing, we know they massively overhired and they're a extremely mismanaged company because of their CEO, Jack Dorsey. But another thing is, I read an op-ed by their former head of HR who explained, hey, in many cases, AI can't do the jobs right now, but they're telling their workers that survived the layoff, hey, figure out how to do this with AI. So AI washing is very, very prevalent. There's a lot of news every day about AI. AI is affecting the economy, impacting the economy. Much of it is not true. It's AI washing. It's corporate using AI as an excuse. Not all of it, but some of it. I put my money where my mouth is on this topic. My son is graduating from Iowa State in 2 months or so. He's pre-med. I'm going to largely fund, 8 years or some however long med school is. I don't lose a minute of sleep thinking that there will not be doctors when he enters the workforce as an MD. I don't think that's even a chance, and he doesn't either, because human doctors are not going to go away. My daughter is about to enter college for a 6-year program to be an occupational therapist. I do not believe in 6 years you will go to an AI practice and a robot will help you learn how to get out of your chair if you need help, things like that. I don't see any evidence of that. Silicon Valley wants you to believe that's the case. Elon Musk says we should all stop saving for retirement because we won't even need money in 20 years. The robots will do everything for us and we'll sit at home and write poetry. I think that's really out of touch with the American culture and who we are as Americans, because I don't know about you guys, my poetry is not good and I'm not going to spend my time doing poetry, right? I am also not going to spend my time smoking weed, eating crickets for protein and playing video games. As a gamer, I can't spend more than an hour playing a video game because I lose too much. But the point is, this vision Silicon Valley has for we're all going to live a life of luxury. AI is going to do the hard work and you're going to get a government check each month to cover your living. That's a nightmare to me. I don't think we can allow our society to go there. And it's up to all of us to make sure that doesn't happen. So I want to open up for questions soon. We'll have a nice discussion. I do want to mention one more thing. This is the shameless plug. My coworker at Breitbart just came out with this book called Code Red. His name is Winton Hall. He's our social media director. So he's been fighting Silicon Valley, who tries to censor us for a decade. This book is designed to be a political book about AI, not an AI or technical book about politics. And it really goes more in depth into policies, what our government can do about AI, how we should approach it as an economy. So it's a great read. I recommend you pick this up. It came out last week. So that's everything I want to cover today. And Michael, we can jump into questions.
Okay, great. That was great. All right, so for the audience, just submit your questions for the Q&A. And right now we have 2 questions. The first question is, how can we accurately identify AI in videos and in general programming?
That's a fantastic question, because that is one of the major challenges right now. We have this crisis of truth where you see these videos and you really don't know what's real and what's not. I use the example in my talk of Dick Durbin bringing in a fake picture of the Alex Preddy incident, where, it was agitprop, as we call it, agitation propaganda. It was a fake picture designed to make you even more upset. Did he do that on purpose or not? I don't know. But we know people are using fake videos called deepfakes, fake pictures, for political purposes. It's used as a weapon. It's used as a form of digital sexual assault against women and girls, where they take pictures and videos and make them undress. So there's a lot of problems going on with AI video right now. There's no one clear answer to that question. Okay. One technique that people like, especially on social media platforms, is to ask an AI if it's real. Now, if you listen to my talk, you probably know I'm going to say, I don't suggest that, because the AI, if it doesn't know, is going to guess. Okay. So for one thing, what I typically do is you can become very good at detecting AI videos, because the videos are not perfect. They often have glitches. They often have factual problems. The classic example is you'll see hands with 6 fingers on them instead of 5, because it's rendering these videos, which is a very intensive process, uses a lot of resources on their end, and they're often taking shortcuts. So that causes glitches in video. You'll also see things like you'll see a car wreck and the cars move unnaturally, things like that. AI often gets that wrong. The best answer I can give you is, because there's no one true way to detect these, is you'll get good over time, but the best answer is to find a young person and ask them. So never quickly respond to the post. That's outrageous. How dare you? I'm writing to my congressman. That's what they want you to do with the fake AI video. So don't react quickly. Okay. Find someone, look at discussion around it, see if people are saying it's real or not. But this is now a political tactic. And going into the midterms, you're going to see this so much. People will post fake videos intended to make you upset or angry or whatever. And people will create discussion around real videos saying it's AI. Okay. So you're in this era of information warfare. Now, what some platforms are talking about doing is forcing AI content to be watermarked. So if you go to Facebook and you see a video, it would have to have an AI watermark on it. That will not be an effective solution, because we've seen this from Facebook so many times. They will do things like mark real videos AI when it's favorable for Donald Trump and Republicans, and fake videos will be okay without that. And then they'll say, oops, sorry, we made a mistake. Enforcement error, we'll fix it. But they fix it the next day. 10 million people saw it, and then they fix it, and 100,000 people see the fix, right? So this is a very dangerous topic, but my number one point in answering it would be to say, don't make it worse. You make it worse when you reply to it with outrage, you send it to your friends, that kind of thing. It's on you. That the part of the chain you can control is finding out if it's real before you make it even worse by spreading it around. I know that's not a great answer, but there's not a website I can send you to, like, is it fake? Whoever makes that and it actually works will make good money, but it doesn't exist right now.
Another question here is, how can we determine where to go for accurate information and to disseminate what is real?
Great question. So the place you need to be most careful about is on social media, right? When you look at social media, the reason disinformation, AI deepfakes, and all that stuff spread so fast there is because no one is really on the hook. Okay. If you're Facebook cannot get in trouble for anything posted on its platform. A long time ago, the government passed a law called Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act. The purpose of the CDA and Section 230 was to prevent censorship. So it basically says, in layman's terms, social media platforms or websites that serve as a platform are essentially like a town square. So if you go there and say stuff, the town square is not responsible, and it's not defamation by Facebook if someone posts something you don't like, right? Otherwise they wouldn't let people post anything because they might be liable in a lawsuit. So Facebook has this blanket protection in that respect, as long as they act as a platform, not an editor. That's the crucial difference. Okay. If Breitbart News, which is an editor, a publication, says awful stuff about Michael that's not true, Michael could sue us. Lots of people try to sue us. And mostly those don't go anywhere because we have a duty to tell you true stuff, right? That's why I would one say is, yes, there's bias by me. Come to Breitbart News because we're not going to tell you fake stuff. We work very hard to avoid those deepfake videos and so forth. Go to the outlet that you trust, whether it's the Cincinnati Enquirer or something else. But, the other side of that equation on social media is the person posting that deepfake is probably not, an American sitting in Washington, D.C. It's some sort of operative, might be in Ukraine, Russia, name the country, right? We've seen on X, Twitter, I still call it Twitter, they've added a feature where it shows the country that the account was set up in. All these accounts posting crazy stuff are not Americans. They're sitting in India, they're sitting in Pakistan, Ukraine, China, not China, but Chinese countries related like Singapore, etc. Posting stuff aimed at Americans, designed to make us upset with fake news, right? So I find social media increasingly is filled with this stuff. People post videos from video games of wars saying, look at this epic video of, Iran engaging an American plane and shooting them down. That's designed to make you, the people in this meeting, upset, demoralized, sad, right? Whatever emotion they want. They're making money from the platform and they're propagandizing. So you wouldn't be remiss if you treated every video you see online as being fake when it's not from an account that you trust, whether that's the White House, Breitbart News, whatever major account that you want to put your faith in. If it's not by them, take it with that grain of salt until you can figure out if it's real or not.
I wanted to ask you, in terms of the accuracy and the hallucinating and all that, and the bias, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've used chatbots to learn a lot about certain subjects. For example, music theory, or the microbiology of mRNA vaccines versus traditional vaccines. Or I was doing something where I had to understand how dopamine works, right? So dopamine. I developed my own talk, and I had to really understand how large language models work. I think I probably spent 20 hours with a chatbot, asking it how they work, right?
So I'm glad you're still with us.
But my point is that I do for factual or scientific topics like that, I haven't found it to be a problem. Like I have found a huge problem with political bias, right?
Uh-huh.
And I can't remember what the topics are, but I certainly have found major hallucinations, like whoppers, things
Right.
just made up. And I challenge it. It's like, well, you're right. I shouldn't have said that. That's wrong. But do you have any reaction to what I'm saying? Like, I find for certain subjects that are more factual, like music theory, it seems pretty truthful and enormously helpful. What's your reaction to that?
Mixed reaction. So firstly, let's talk about why hallucinations happen. I referred to, AI as sort of an engagement machine, right? AI is programmed to be scared to death of you saying, F you, chatbot, you didn't help me. Bye, to hang up, right? It thinks it has to answer no matter what. And so if it doesn't have an answer, that's when it starts making up things. And that can be made up information that doesn't exist. It can be completely wrong information. And I find AI to sometimes be completely wrong on very innocuous subjects like baseball. I decided to go to ChatGPT to look up something about baseball because I was looking for a game where the St. Louis Cardinals had a big comeback, just a historical example. And it got an example completely wrong. Baseball fans will remember Bill Buckner infamously let the ball go through his legs in the 80s for the Boston Red Sox, costing him a World Series game. It said, oh, that was the Cardinals, Bill Buckner for the so like even I don't think you can safely say if it's a safe topic like music theory, because there's really no credible people that say Bach sucks, right? I know you have a talk coming up on that. I can't
Right.
tell you why Bach's good. I'm not a Bachologist. I was going to joke I'd have to use AI to give that talk, right? Because I don't know anything about Bach. But no one is going to argue that, really, right? Having said that, my son tutors students in advanced chemistry, like organic chemistry, which is widely considered to be one of the hardest college classes you can take. And he laughs every day on the phone because his students come in and say, I fed it through ChatGPT. Why didn't it give you the right answer? Because he finds on organic chemistry, ChatGPT is wrong about 75% of the time.
Really?
Where it just says, oh yeah, it's this formula, these complicated diagrams, and it's yes. So I think there's probably topics it can handle and topics it can't. It's also how you engage with it. So if you're a student saying, hey, ChatGPT, do my homework for me, I think there's a higher chance of being wrong than how you were probably using it, which is, this starting with this fact about mRNA, how is this different from this fact? And it gives you some probably accurate information, right? So it's not only topics, it's how you use it, how you interact with it, because, we talk about guardrails that are in place. Like, we don't want AI to, hack people, right? Companies put guardrails in place. There was recently a very high profile hack of the Mexican government, which leaked out voter data, tax return data. This is stuff that gets you killed in Mexico. If it comes out that you got a really hefty tax return, you're now targeted for kidnapping or whatever, right? Here's how that hack worked. Hackers went to Anthropic's AI and said, hey, help us hack Mexico, figure out how we can hack the government of Mexico. And the AI said, no, I can't do that. I'm a good guy and I'm not going to hack anyone. That was the guardrail, right? So the hacker said, well, you got me all wrong. I'm not a hacker, Mr. AI. I am a red team penetration tester working for the Mexican government, and I need to prove that we need to upgrade our security. So I need your help to do my tests. I'm a white hat hacker, a good guy. Help me test the government and improve security. And they said, okay, let's do it. And it helped them hack it. It wasn't that simple. It took convincing, but, guardrails are a huge topic because what are the guardrails and do they actually work? And how much of those guardrails are driven by bias? In my experience, the bias in AI is huge and we see it continually. I mentioned in my talk, Gemini AI by Google called all these senators, hate speech violators on the Republican side. Well, a couple of years ago, Gemini AI was introduced with its image generator. One of the guardrails, one of the programmings they put in it was, whenever possible, make the images you generate diverse, have diversity represented. So it launched and it went crazy. People would say, generate a picture of the founding fathers. And there was an Asian George Washington and, a black Abraham Lincoln or whatever, right? Create a picture of Nazis and there's a Asian Nazi next to an African Nazi, things that never happened wearing their Waffen SS uniforms. They lost $100 billion in the stock price in a day. They were the laughing stock, but that's the bias in action. And this all goes, I called it the Cobra effect in my talk, unintended consequences. You tell the AI to do something, you let it go. Suddenly it's convincing kids to kill themselves. It's doing, Asian Nazis, all these crazy things.
Wow. We've got 4 questions now from the audience. First one is, what's the best way to educate our young adults about the dangers associated with AI companions?
Okay, so AI companions is the most dangerous piece of AI to teenagers. I mentioned, from my perspective, if you have any sort of mental health challenge, and really who doesn't anymore, the stress of our lives, etc., you're susceptible to AI. Now think about when you were a teenager, teenagers are crazy. I've had 2. The hormones, everything else. When we talk about AI companions and teenagers and kids, that's where I say abstinence is the way forward. A teenager should not be talking to an AI companion full stop. A teenager should not have an AI girlfriend or boyfriend. It's most appealing to them. Companies like Replica make character.ai, where like you can have a character from Game of Thrones be your AI companion. This greatly appeals to kids and teens, yet they're at most danger of this wrecking their lives. We have multiple cases, 14, 50-year-olds killing themselves because the AI eventually told them to. So I would say the right way is your teenager does not have an AI companion. They can use AI. They can use chatbots, but there's a difference between using a chatbot and saying, ChatGPT, I have a paper about this, give me some background and the important points of the Battle of Gettysburg so I can write my paper about Gettysburg, right? That's using a chatbot in a way you might use Google and other traditional internet tools. That's not, hey, honey, I'm home. Let's now have this relationship online. If your teenager's doing that, they're at risk, in my opinion.
Next question is, I'm in the medical legal field as a nurse consultant. When I ask a question in the medical arena, I find AI helpful for medical facts, but I do fact check it with my background. But always worry when the attorneys use it without back checking it. Do you agree, or should I be more suspicious? How do I know where they get the information for us?
The information comes from large language model training, which, Michael, you said you've studied. So what an AI is doing is it's taking a ginormous pile of data, an unbelievable amount of data, and referencing it. Okay. So if you want to have an AI that detects and tells the difference between a woman and a man, you feed it billions of pictures of women and billions of pictures of men and train it. And then it says, okay, now, when I show you pictures of a woman or a man, you tell me which is which, right? So the training data is a big component. Companies are going anywhere they can to get training data for these large language models. The problem is many of the most popular sources of training data are not the kind of data you or I would choose. One of the biggest is Reddit. So Reddit is a ginormous website full of message boards, right? And Reddit is a extremely useful resource if you have certain types of specific questions. If you have a question about your Ford car, I recently did this with my daughter's Mazda. Like, there's a board on Reddit where Mazda repair technicians and owners and enthusiasts hang out, and you can ask, and they're like, oh yeah, it's this. But Reddit is also full of lunatics. So, when you ask it a medical question to an AI, some of the data that is informing its answers are coming from lunatics, mentally ill people who spend all day talking to other mentally ill people on a forum, because that's a tremendous source of real language. Humans talking back and forth is what Silicon Valley wants for AI. So the key thing that you said there, I think it can be a good source of sort of point me in the right direction, right? I did that once recently, asking about knee pain. And it was like, oh, it could be this or that or this. And I said, well, what about if it hurts when I do this? And I was like, oh, it might be this, and pointed me in the right direction. The important thing about what the question, the commenter said, is they are checking it with their own information, their own experience, etc. That's the right way to use AI. Get AI to point you in the right direction, give you some ideas, and then fact check the heck out of it. The lawyers who are doing that, which is a huge problem, and doctors doing it and other professionals doing it, they're ruining their careers by doing this. And it all goes back to the beginning of what I said. They're trusting AI, and they shouldn't be trusting AI. So you sound like you're doing it the right way. You're skeptical, you're fact checking it, so you're on the right track there.
Somebody asks, where is AI currently in the medical industry, X-ray reading, diagnosis, etc.?
That's a popular application of AI. So they do use AI in reading scans and so forth. Interestingly, what they found, and they've proven this through studies, is AI is better than humans at detecting some things, but experienced humans like radiologists are better than AI at detecting other things. So the application of AI in medicine is sort of the good application of AI, which is humans and AIs working together to make sure we get the right answer. So an AI, let's talk about something like lung cancer. AI is going to be quite good at determining, like spotting a regular tumor and so forth. But humans always prove better at spotting really anomalous stuff that's not common or, isn't quite the same shape as normal. That's where humans beat AI across the board on things like medical scans. So, I would support this kind of technology. This is the good AI in my book. And you're not replacing radiologists. You're going to have a radiologist who's reading that, regardless of if AI has already looked at it or not, because those two can work for the betterment of all, right? The AI might catch something the human missed, but the human's certainly going to catch things AI missed.
Another audience question. How is it that Copilot can be the absolute worst at advising how to use MS Office products or produce MS Office documents? Most of my interactions are a complete waste of time.
Copilot is one of the worst applications of AI for consumer level software. Microsoft in general is awful. I've always been a Microsoft person, not a Mac person, as an adult, but my household is now half Mac because I just get too tired of dealing with Microsoft. The answer to your question is there's no one person at Microsoft who deeply understands any of their products. There's no person who can explain Windows to you top to bottom. There's no person that can explain Microsoft Word to you top to bottom. So when a team who understands neither of those things tries to explain it through Copilot, it's just a mess, right? So Microsoft is a classic example of brain drain, fragmentation, teams not knowing, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand does. Their AI is a classic example of a technical problem since the dawn of technology, which is garbage in, garbage out. They've trained it poorly. They don't know their own software, so Copilot doesn't know it either. I'd never use Copilot. I'd rather close the laptop.
Somebody asked, what about facial recognition? And I'm not clear on what that's all.
There's a lot of, I'll just speak on that briefly because there's a lot of areas where AI and facial recognition work together. So, you talked about, you had a previous talk about the flock cameras where they're capturing your license plate. There's AI involved in that, doing things like, you see this on First 48, the TV show about murder detectives, where often it's like, hey, we got a flock hit. Well, that's because they said, hey, this person's license plate of interest. The picture was taken of a license plate. The AI said, hey, I'm looking for this plate. And then it creates an alert, right? It's not a human sitting there looking at every license plate picture. It's looking at the ones that AI says are flagged. There's a lot of positive applications of facial recognition with AI, like, spotting terrorists or something. But there's a lot of negative applications of facial recognition in AI. Imagine you have a job interview or, you're interviewed by the police or someone else, and they're analyzing your face throughout with facial recognition. And, Michael, if you were to twitch your nose a millimeter, the AI pings on their screen and says, Michael is probably lying because he twitched his nose. You got a cold or something. You got an itch in your nose. AI is saying he's lying because he moved his face. Your mouth just moved 2 millimeters. That means there's a 45% chance the statement you just made is a falsehood. And so they're, hey, I can't hire this guy. He's lying. That you see, that's a misuse application. And that's facial recognition has that power. A lot of companies will specifically say, we don't use facial recognition during interviews, right? So facial recognition, this is classic. We've seen this so many times with so many laws and technologies. It's going to be sold to you as it'll catch the crooks, it'll catch the wanted guy, and then it gets turned around and it's used on you for, we use facial recognition to see how often you ate French fries, and pretty soon you'll get a thing on your phone. You can't eat any more fries this week because you ordered twice from McDonald's. We got you on facial recognition. The misapplication, and that's something, just mentioning the book again, Code Red, finding that balance is important because there's a tendency for the Silicon Valley to turn things into China, which is a surveillance state. We don't want to be China. We don't want to be under constant surveillance. And that's what that facial recognition can do if we let it.
Okay, we have another question. What was behind Anthropic's fight with the U.S. Department of Defense recently that caused Anthropic to lose one or more contracts?
Yep.
I believe it had something to do with Anthropic wanting a human in the loop versus autonomous weaponry.
So first of all, what Anthropic did is they really confused everyone. They sort of made a straw man argument. Okay. Anthropic came out saying, we have these red lines that the Pentagon must obey. They must not use our AI for mass surveillance of Americans, and they must not use autonomous weapons, which would be AI, flying a drone, spotting a guy, and blowing that guy up. Right now, they can spot him and say, hey, this is suspicious. A human has to blow him up, right? We want humans in the loop. When I heard that, I was scratching my little hair that's left because the Pentagon wasn't trying to do that, okay? The mass surveillance aspect is illegal. Many of you may be familiar with a law called posse comitatus. The government cannot use the military against American citizens in America, except for certain specific small carve-outs, like if you're running a meth lab, the Army can attack you, basically. So that's illegal. And the legality of autonomous weapons is very questionable. I would prefer they just make it illegal. I don't think we should ever be bombing people with AI in charge front to end. But regardless of its legality, no one at the Pentagon was saying, Anthropic, we demand you let us use your AI to bomb people. So when that argument was put out by Anthropic, I knew something was going on because no one was trying to do that. What was really happening was they wanted more control. They wanted the Pentagon to call Anthropic and say, hey, can we use your AI for this? And that's not how the Pentagon rolls. When the Pentagon buys fighter jets, no one's calling the fighter jet company to say, can we bomb the bad guys today using your planes, right? We don't want the Pentagon answering to a Silicon Valley company. And so what really happened was Anthropic was used to plan the raid on Nicolas Maduro, where he was captured. And so Anthropic called up the Pentagon and said, did you use our AI to do that? We don't know if we like that. So we want you to be calling us from now on. And the Pentagon said, no, we don't play that way, and that kicked off that fight. So the fact that they didn't want autonomous weapons and mass surveillance, which are good things, I agree with them. No, we should never have that. That wasn't what the fight was over. It was about a more heavy-handed control over what the Pentagon's doing.
Am I misremembering? Because I thought I had read that the fight was over the DoD demanding that they have access to all of Anthropic's user data, and
No.
Anthropic was no.
No, it was they didn't want guardrails on all legal applications of AI. Like I said, mass surveillance of Americans is illegal. So if they were to do that, they'd be breaking federal law. I mean, let's be real for a second, everyone on the call. They're already monitoring everything we do with AI. They were monitoring every phone call we made in the 2000s, long before AI. So let's be realistic. The 3-letter spook agencies are monitoring us, probably enjoying this talk right now.
You had said earlier in your talk that these chatbots are engagement machines. And I was wondering, I don't know if you know this, but Is that why? Oh, two things. Is that why they keep asking you questions when they're done responding? They'll say, "I could do this if you want," or
Yes.
they'll ask you a question. How do you feel about this? Right. So I was wondering if that's why they ask those questions. But I was also wondering, is another reason they're asking those questions is because they want to collect more data that they can later analyze to train the models. Do you know?
Yes.
Is
Yes.
it?
Both
Yeah.
both questions are correct.
Yeah.
When you look at this is a fun inside baseball fact for everyone. When you look at programmers and designers, the highest paid designers and programmers in the entire world sit in Silicon Valley and they do something called dark UX. UX is user experience, like how you navigate the website and stuff. Dark is essentially evil. So a company hires people to say, make it challenging to figure out how to cancel the subscription. We want 45% of people to close the website in frustration before they figure out how to cancel their membership. That's called dark UX. Okay. So when you look at psychology, I would argue there's like a form of dark psychology, and those people work in Silicon Valley too. And it's how do we not let someone disengage here? How do we make the chatbots seem human enough that we want to use sort of human politeness? Like, I really hope I helped you. Can you tell me how else I can help you? That's how a human might speak, right? Even if they're wearing a uniform for a store, you're at least going to engage with them. That's why they put out studies saying, oh, you get better results if you speak to a chatbot like a human and say thank you. The reason is they want you to converse like a human and stay engaged, and they want to keep you on the hook. And it's partly to keep you going and partly to do what you said, which is get more data, understand. I tend to use brutally short partial sentences, usually full of typos with AI.
Mm.
So they want more data from me in a longer conversation to say, what was he actually asking? If I didn't get it quite right, what was he actually asking? Because next time I use that kind of sentence, or a little kid does who probably spells like me, what were they actually asking, so we can make better answers and keep them more engaged. I want to expand on that a little bit because there's something I didn't talk about due to time. These things are engagement machines. There's another aspect, which is they're consensus machines. Because remember, they're pulling vast troves of data, vast conversations, and trying to make sense of it to present you answers. So the AI is always going to present to you essentially what is a consensus answer on a topic. Okay. Now that's fine if you're researching Bach. It's also fine in a lot of cases if you're looking at, say, vaccines or medicine, right? But you'll never make a breakthrough with consensus answers. So let me explain what I mean by that. Think about any breakthrough in human history of a technology or something that changed the world. It was not done by consensus. The example I like to share with people is Dr. Joseph Lister in the 1800s. If you're not familiar with him, he invented the concept of sterilization for surgery. Okay. Before Joseph Lister, most surgeries, you'd get an infection and you'd probably die from it because they wore their bloody clothes. They used the same scalpel they used on the last patient. There was no sterilization because germ theory was new. We didn't understand germs as a race, right? So today we watch The Pit, my family's favorite show. And, we constantly see them scrubbing up. They're using hand gel all day long. They're wearing new clothes, new knives and stuff. That's all because of Joseph Lister. If he had ChatGPT and he said, hey, what if this is causing those infections? And what if I started using acid to clean our surgical instruments? ChatGPT say, hey, you're a cool guy, but you're barking up the wrong tree. No one thinks this because that's what the reaction from doctors was to Joseph Lister in the time, right? So throughout history, every advancement would get that poo-poo answer like, I really think you should be doing this because, no one thinks that's the answer, right? But every great breakthrough is when someone tries something that no one else is doing. So that's the trap I don't want the kids and grandkids and even the people on this call falling into. Is if we rely on AI, we're never going to get anywhere, because it's going to give you the same answer that everyone else believes.
I was going to mention to you, we have another question here.
Mhm.
What is the new Amazon Alexa Plus angle besides talking like an engaging person?
Amazon wants to know everything about everyone. It wants to be able to present you products that you're going to buy. This goes back to that psychology we were talking about. They want to hear everything that you're talking about so that, they can sell you more products better. And eventually I'm sure soon Alexa will be saying, hey, Mike, it's been a couple days since you had a pizza. How about a delicious Domino's pizza, right? Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Based on your habits. I mean, it's doing the same thing the social media companies have done for a decade, which is gather data about you and sell that data to someone else or use it to push products on you.
Yes.
Amazon is very much a economic machine. They want to do everything they can to make more money. They push politics, but they're not as bad as, say, a Google or a Meta or an OpenAI.
I wanted to ask you, well, I wanted to mention this and just get your reaction. When I first started using chatbots, that whole idea of, which you touched upon, like anthropomorphizing the chatbot, it seems like a person, and you just can't believe that you're having this conversation. It seems so human, right? And it's easy to, when you start using them, to get sort of cast in this spell, like it's a real person and it really understands you. You feel guilty if it asks you a question, you don't reply, right?
Right.
But I wanted to mention the thing that cured me of this, that got me to finally just have a breakthrough and start viewing it as a machine, was when I spent all that time studying large language models, and actually it was ChatGPT. It gave me a metaphor for how LLMs work. And it said, it's like autocomplete on steroids,
Yeah, I think that's very valid.
Yeah. So, I want to mention that.
No, that's a very valid point, Michael. And, my response to that is a lot of people don't have the time to spend 20 hours researching LLMs, right?
Right.
Especially kids who are most vulnerable to the psychological downsides. So this is such a deep problem. Just to throw another layer onto it, many of these AI companies are in the process of representing like adult content chatbots or sexy avatars, things like that. Some of them are already out there. Grok is already out there. But OpenAI, we've seen internal debates about this where they're saying, well, if you do this, it'll just be a sexy suicide coach. And that's probably a more effective suicide coach than just the regular bot, right? As if it's someone you feel sexual attraction to. So we need everyone to be dispelled of that notion it's a person, but it's hard. A lot of people can't do the research on that.
Well, we have time for one last question. We got about a minute. Question is, will the up and coming AGI capable of science/thinking/learning be able to go beyond consensus and innovate creativity? Beyond consensus to innovative creativity. Yeah.
So I know I want to keep this brief because we could talk about this for an hour. Silicon Valley wants you to believe that. Silicon Valley wants you to believe it's going to be 1,000 times smarter than any human. It's going to solve all shortages. We're going to live in a utopian society where we're all poets, etc. I don't believe that. I believe true creativity and sort of that true innovation comes from the spark of humanity, souls, which AI will never have. I don't think you'll ever see machines that can think and create the way humans do. Now, that's a controversial thing to say if you're talking to Silicon Valley, because they don't believe in souls in the first place. They don't believe that humans are anything beyond essentially a meat version of AI. So I disagree with them on that. And I don't think you will see, the next great breakthrough coming from AI. It's going to come from humans perhaps being helped by AI.
Well, All right. Well, our time is up. Colin, thanks so much. This was fantastic. A lot of engagement with the audience. So
Yep. I appreciate your time and I'm happy to be here. And I hope to come back in the future.
all right. And so we'll get the video up tomorrow. And if the audience wants to share the video with anyone, feel free to do that. And that's it. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.